Welcome to The Winning Edge, the podcast where champions are built and legacies are made. I'm Leonard Wheeler, former NFL player turned entrepreneur of 24 years and co-executive director of the NFL Legends community. After years of being on the field, I've learned that the real game starts when the stadium lights go out. This show is your all-access pass to the mindset, strategies, and leadership lessons that fuel success beyond sports. Each week, we will dive into what it truly takes to win in business, leadership, and life. We'll discuss how elite athletes, game-changing entrepreneurs, and industry leaders turn discipline into dominance and setbacks into comebacks. The next play is yours. All right, so welcome back to the Winning Edge podcast, where we challenge mindset, spark transformation, and help you create the edge you need to win in life and leadership. Today, I have a question for you, though. Who's holding the pen to your story? Who's holding the pen to your story? So today, we're going to talk about how do you rewrite the narrative and how do you change the story you're living? So how do you rewrite the narrative and how do you change the story that you're living? But first, who's holding the pen to your story? Is it you? Or is it your past? Is it your past fears? Is it your past failure? Is it other people's opinions or even comfort itself? But who's holding the pen to it? Because so many times we allow other people to tell us how we're valued, what we're worth, to tell us how you should act, to tell you how you should think. The truth is, most of us are living out a script that we didn't even consciously choose. So we inherit beliefs, labels, limitations from the world around us. You know, just growing up. I know sometimes growing up in the projects for a long time, you inherit this belief that, am I going to always be here? Like, how am I going to get out of here? And I know some of you probably grew up the same way, sometimes without even knowing it. But what if I told you that right now, today, you have the power to flip the script, to reframe from your past, redefine your identities? We continue to remind ourselves of the same thing in the past. Well, you know, I grew up, I didn't have a father, or I grew up and, you know, my parents did this. I mean, at some point, we have to give an expiration date to how we grew up, as hard as it is. Listen, I had a dad, my biological father lived 10 minutes from my high school. He came to one high school game. Hold on, I played professional football. You're trying to tell me that your dad lived 10 minutes from you and he came to one high school game? Yes. And let me tell you, if I continue to remind myself over and over and over of that story, then it's hard for me to rewrite the narrative that's holding me back. What I had to do was I had to rewrite the narrative. How did I do that? I started telling myself, who are the people that are supporting me? My stepdad, William, love him to death. He supported me. He stepped in as my father. My mom, oh my gosh, she supported me my entire life. My sisters, my friends, my relatives, my cousins, they supported me. And so what I had to do was I had to stop focusing on the things that weren't happening for me. And I had to start focusing on the things that are happening for me. Teenagers, I'm talking to you as well. Stop focusing on the people that are not feeding you the correct food and start focusing on the people that are supporting you. Social media continues to remind us to look at the negative words. And so we start to read our own writing. We start to read the newspaper. We had a thing planned in NFL is that don't read your own clippings. Sometimes you can read how good you are, and it's just as bad as reading how bad you are, because you start to create this entitlement of an attitude and you start to think that you are so deserving over everyone else being deserving. So in this episode, we're taking a deep dive into how your internal story determines your external reality. And how do we reclaim the authorship of our lives? So whether you're stuck in patterns that no longer serve you or you're stepping into a next version of yourself, this conversation will equip you, hopefully, it will equip you with the mindset and tools to break free. So here we go. The first one, we're going to talk about the power of the narrative. Whether you realize it or not, your self-identity is shaped by beliefs and assumptions you've adopted over a period of time. So through an environment of childhood, to an environment or your childhood, past experiences, or society, your narrative becomes the lens in which you view life. I talk about self-talk a lot in my coaching practice. The reason I talk about self-talk is as a former NFL player, what we say on the field is important because what we say on the field as we're playing the game of football will sometimes dictate the action that we take. It will dictate the way we act. It will sometimes dictate the way we react. And I teach a lot around emotional intelligence. The reason I do is because I understand that awareness and mindset is everything. Mindset, how you think. And that's why I love scripture so much. It's because it allows us to rewire the way that we think about ourselves, because you have flesh and you have spirit. You have two things battling against one another. The truth is, most of us are living a script that we didn't consciously choose. Sometimes we inherit beliefs, labels, limitations from the world, and we continue to live out those things. I talk about this a lot when people tell little Johnny, you're so bad. Little Johnny, you're never going to be anything. Little Johnny, I wish that you just grow up. Little Johnny, stop acting like that. You act just like your dad. What do you think is going to happen to little Johnny if little Johnny continues to hear that over and over and over? It becomes a narrative that little Johnny will start to live out to be his truth. Parents, I want you to think about what you're saying to your kids a lot of times. Now, I grew up in that household where sometimes my mom would say, boy, you look just like your daddy. And it would crack me up because I know that sometimes I was probably looking like my dad. But it triggered a response from my mom. Now, she probably didn't think about it as much at that time, but think about what we're doing sometimes to our kids. To where it's like, don't act like that. You act just like your dad. That makes me sick. Don't act like that. You act just like your mom, and that makes me sick. Think about it. Sometimes without even knowing it, we are creating this figure in our children to act a certain way and not even knowing that is creating a narrative for them that could end up being something that they don't want later on in their lives. But what if I told you that right now, today, you have the power to flip the script? You have the power to rewrite the narrative. You have the power to hold the pen and rewrite your narrative. So we're going to take a deep dive and we're going to talk about some different perspectives, and we're going to talk about the power of the narrative. So I believe that everyone operates from an internal story. And the internal story, like I said, was created at a young age a lot of times. Sometimes it's created later. I give an example. Me going through a divorce. And let me tell you, going through a divorce is one of the hardest things you'll ever go through in your life. So when God says, I hate divorce, he's saying it for a reason. So whether you realize it or not, your identity is shaped by your beliefs and assumptions you've adopted over time. So you either adopted over time through your environment or your society. So, but this narrative becomes the lens that you start to see life through. Now, Going through a divorce, what that did was it changed a lot of things in my life because it created embarrassing moments. You start to feel a sense of shame. You feel bad for your children because they didn't cause the divorce. But you go through this self condemnation almost to where you start to feel this condemnation on yourself that causes you to withdraw. And you start to feel this guilt and, like I said, this shame. And studying neuroscience, it talks about repeated thoughts rewire the brain. According to Dr. Joe Dispenza, author and neuroscientist, he wrote Neurons That Fire Together, Wire Together. When you keep telling yourself the same story, I'm bad at public speaking, I'm not worthy of this success, you create a deep neural pathway that reinforces that belief. So making it feel like fact, when in fact, it's a habit of thought. So, think about this. I want you to think about Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey, the reason I love her story is that Oprah Winfrey, born into poverty, facing early trauma, which, if you don't know the story of Oprah, I'm not going to get into it here, but Oprah Winfrey facing early trauma in her life, she could have said, I'm a victim of my circumstances and just threw in a towel. But instead, Oprah rewrote her story, embraced education, studied emotional intelligence. If she didn't study it with a book, you would think she did, because she was so purposeful of becoming one of the most influential women, not just Black women. Oprah became one of the most influential women in media and philanthropy. Her internal narrative evolved from I'm broken to I'm empowered to help others heal. So I want you to think about that. So she went from I'm broken, which, okay, let's stay with that for a second, because sometimes we become so over religious at times to where I get it. I'm broken. I tell my wife I'm a broken man, but I'm healed by the Spirit of the Father. I'm broken, but I'm healed by the Spirit of the Father. So you don't have to walk around saying you're broken, you're broken, you're broken, you're broken, because the Father comes to heal. That's what he does. He's a healing God. He heals our wounds. So if he heals our wounds, why are we steady saying we're broken? Anyway, that's besides the point. Let's talk about number 2, identifying your current story. So many people live under this invisible script, narrative they've repeated for so long that it becomes something that they accept. I'll give an example. I'm not enough. I don't deserve success. Again, let me go back, because like I said, we become sometimes over religious to where we can't even say I deserve success, because it becomes so over religious at times to where you can't have real conversations. What about saying it's too late for me to change? Or I'm not as talented as others. Think about all of those limiting beliefs. I remember coming up in high school as a ninth grader, I played offensive guard. I was an offensive guard in the ninth grade. Look at me. Do I look big to you? I was an offensive line. I was an offensive lineman, offensive guard, and I probably weighed 130 pounds as a ninth grader. Man, I was like a ping pong ball. Like I was ding, 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 ding. The problem is these stories aren't your own. They come from early criticism, cultural messaging, past trauma, comparison. So I was compared to other linemen that I played against. Not until the 10th grade when Coach Cox came to me and he said, hey, buddy, why are you over there with those linemen? Come over here with the defensive backs. What do you think happened between me playing in the 8th grade in middle school and coming to the 9th grade? I told myself a story that I didn't know who or what position I was good at. So I allowed my coach, Coach Brown, bless his heart, Coach Brown, I forgive you, buddy. I allowed my coach to put me in a position that I was not built for. So, not until the 10th grade, when I looked at the defensive backs and I said, hold on, these guys are my size. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go and knock the crap out of them. And that is what I did. Is that I was already aggressive hitting linemen. You trying to tell me I get to hit someone my size? So I want you to think about this. What beliefs do you constantly repeat to yourself? What beliefs? Think about them. Just tell me what they are. Just think for a second right now. What are some beliefs, limiting beliefs? What are some limiting beliefs that you repeat to yourself? Now, let's just think about what are some beliefs. It could be positive or negative that you repeat to yourself. Okay, secondly, where did those beliefs originate from? Was they shaped by you or by someone else's words or actions? Because let me tell you something, insecurity, people who are insecure around you, they will limit you. I'll give you another example. I remember when Lindsay, our daughter, was a kid and she was playing soccer for this club in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Lindsay had trained her butt off the entire summer. And I remember us signing up for soccer and we went to sign up and they responded like this. We know Lindsay. What? I'm thinking like, no, you don't. You don't know Lindsay and you don't know me. Because if you think I'm getting ready to let my daughter sign up with some people that are going to prejudge her based on her freaking past, you're wrong. And I remember getting ticked off. Like I remember getting ticked off because what I was tired of people thinking that they know how hard someone has worked. What about you? Maybe you went back to school, or maybe you're an athlete and you worked your butt off in the summer. And instead of the coach or the boss giving you a chance to show who you are today, they keep you in the past thinking that they know who you are based on the things that you did or didn't do in your past. What about past mistakes? People that can't forgive you for things that they feel like you did to them. So what they do is that they feel that they can punish you based on them giving you opportunities to show that you're a different person. So what they do is they continue to remind you of who you were, of the mistakes that you made, of your past failures, but they're not reminding themselves of their past failures. But they might go, oh, I don't care. I mean, you know what? I don't care if you hold me to the past. But no one wants to hold you to the past. That's you not wanting to let things go. Hey, listen, this is a touchy subject for me because we talk about grace and we talk about mercy. And I'm around believers and they're talking about grace and mercy, but yet they can't forgive everything. They only forgive selective things. And not just believers. I'm talking about the world. That sometimes you want the world to forgive you, but the world don't know how to forgive you because they're too busy competing against you. And if this is resonating with you, good. Because that's the purpose of the podcast, is to make sure that we're not continually living in that old narrative and that we're learning how to rewrite the narrative. It's time for us to learn how to extend self-grace, self-mercy. Because if people aren't going to forgive me, I better learn how to forgive myself. And that is the truth. And that is a fact. So I want to talk about 3 areas: acknowledge, reframe, and reinforce. Acknowledge what you did. Acknowledge the things that you're saying to yourself. I'm afraid of failure because I grew up thinking mistakes made me less than. So I'm afraid of failure. So guess what? If I'm afraid of failure, what's going to happen is I'm not going to do what it takes to succeed. because that fear, false evidence appearing real, is continually holding me back as if it's an invisible rope that continually has me tied to something. How do you reframe that? So acknowledge, reframe, reinforce. Acknowledge where you are. Reframe the statement. Failure proves that I'm pushing my limits. I failed in life over and over and over, and it continues to remind me that I can push through. It continues to remind me that I'm not alone. Now, how do I reinforce the message within myself? I reinforce it by actively repeating and embodying the new narrative. I used to tell Lindsay when she ran track, stand in a place of authority when you're out there on the track. Stand in a place of authority. She would stand upright, not down. We remind our kids that when you walk into a room as if you belong in the room. Use affirmations. I'm enough. I'm good enough. I'm strong enough. I'm fast enough. I'm pretty enough. I am enough. Replace those old habits with new habits. Last week, I talked about mentorship. Find a mentor. Don't wait for a mentor to find you. Go and ask somebody. You have to learn to move. You can't continue to lay down and expect someone to remind you that you're laying down. Stop procrastinating. If you're going to create a new narrative, you have to stop procrastinating. Let me tell you, I know that sometimes I have a tendency to procrastinate. So guess what I did? I surrounded myself with people that don't procrastinate. And they hold me accountable of not procrastinating. Kimberly Lovey, she will remind me, Leonard, we have a podcast to do. Yes, ma'am. My wife, Kim, she will remind me, baby, this is what we said we were going to do. Our kids, hey, Dad, didn't you say you were going to do this? Lindsay will tell me in a second, hey, Dad, you forgot to send me this picture. Dang it, I forgot to send the picture. I'm sorry, baby. Right? Learning how to say, I'm sorry. Learning how to ask for forgiveness. That helps you rewrite the narrative. Those old limiting beliefs of, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. Why should I say I'm sorry? Why should I keep taking the high road when everybody else, they're jacking it up? And why should I keep saying I'm sorry? Those are those old limiting beliefs. Move on. Okay, let me calm down. I want to talk about, let me just give you some key questions. What if you viewed setbacks as setups for comebacks? And I know we talk about that. That's cliche. I get it. But here are some actionable tools that I kind of wrote down for us to think about. Positive self-talk affirmations. Now, you have to have real congruency. What is congruency is? What is congruency? Congruency is when you have a tone and you are so congruent with your tone that you believe it. For instance, I grew up a compulsive stutterer. I don't stutter like that anymore. That's congruency. Congruency is when your inner and your outer, they align together and they become one. And you start to believe what you're saying and you affirm it. You start replacing the negative loops with statements like, I'm growing stronger every day. I went through something recently that I'm going to share with you on a podcast. I'm not going to get into it here, but I know that I'm getting stronger every day. And I know that I'm going to start to show up to opportunities that are in front of me. What about you? What about you? What are you telling yourself over and over and over? That I'm good enough. I'm strong enough. I'm pretty enough. I'm worthy. I have enough value. Lord, you trust me to do this. If other people don't trust you, you better learn to trust yourself. If other people don't trust you, you are better learn to trust yourself. Because if you don't, they will continue to hold the pen to writing your story. Let's talk about journaling. Write out. So, one of the things that I do, and I was going to say, write out the story you've been living by, and then journal a new rewritten version. Be specific. The old, like I'm stuck in my job. The new, I'm actively creating new opportunities aligned with my purpose. So the old one is I'm stuck in my, you're not stuck in your job. You're choosing to act stuck, just like you're choosing to act like a victim, but you're not stuck in your job. So the new narrative is I'm active creating new opportunities aligned with my new purpose. Do you know why sometimes I pause when people ask me to work with them? The reason I pause is because number one, I need to pray about it. The Father might not release me to do that with that particular person or that business. So I pause. It might seem like it's procrastination. It has kept me from so many bad decisions. I pause. Do I pause on everything? No. So I don't need you out there being a critic and saying and critiquing me and saying, do you pause on everything? No. But when I feel that the Father wants me to pause, I will pause and I will pray before I move. Practice gratitude. One of the new areas of focus that I'm focused on is being more grateful. I think about how far I've come from that little stuttering kid that grew up in Toccoa, Georgia. And I think about how far I've come from that place, and I start to just focus and meditate on being grateful. Just close my eyes, and I'm like, Lord, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for how far you've brought me. And it also scientifically it boosts your dopamine and your serotonin when you're saying how grateful you are. The chemicals for motivation and happiness, they start to overwhelm you, and you start to really realize that, man, Lord, you brought me such a long way. I am so grateful being in this place. Be grateful. So let's talk about just the final reflection. What would your life look like if you wrote a new story starting today? What would your life look like if you took hold of your pen and you started to write on your canvas? Would you take more risk? Would you forgive yourself faster? Would you finally launch that business or write that book or apply to that new role? Or leave your family with a new energy, a new motivation, a new outlook on life? What would you do? Would you go back to school? I did. I don't know why sometimes, because school is not easy all the time, but it's not as hard as you think it is either. What would you do? What story would you tell? And what story do you want to leave for others to read? You know, I know our kids sometimes are tired of us telling them, take out the trash, make up your bed, pick up that, clean that off. What are you doing? Make sure that you are doing this. Make sure that you're acting right when you walk into a room. Make sure that you're not wearing those ratty clothes. Make sure that you're not wearing flip-flops to the gym. Make sure that you do. And I know that they get tired of us telling them what to do and how to do it. But let me explain something to you. I've talked to a lot of kids and grown-ups that didn't have parents that spoke life into them and over them. And they learned the hard way because that is how they were parenting their kids. And then they had to rewrite their story and their journey. So young people, if you're listening to this, learn to be grateful for your parents that are speaking life over you and in you. Learn to be respectful and say thank you. You know, I always talk about, especially with young people, if you're respectful and you say yes, yes, sir, or no, sir, or yes, you will always sometimes, no, not always, but you will get to the front of the line a little faster than other people. When you learn to be respectful, sometimes people will pull you to the front of the line. I always talk about favor is not fair because God's favor, he says, is worth more than silver and gold. So I wrote down a couple of things that I want to share with you all. You're the author. Stop giving the pen away to failure. Rewrite your story, reinforce the action, and reinvent the result. Rewrite your story, reinforce your action, and reinvent your result. I'm so thankful for the people that continue to give me opportunities like Anthony Barrero, Martin Walsh, Mr. Hendrick, who allowed me to come and coach his people, Dyken, who continues to allow me to work with their people. I'm so grateful for you giving me the opportunity, because sometimes that little Leonard, that little boy that grew up in Toccoa, Georgia, sometimes he wants to come back to the playground and play. And I thank all of you so much for continually reinforcing who I am today and giving me the opportunity to reinvest in your company and in your lives. So thank you all so much for being here today. I am going to challenge you though. I want you to take 5 minutes after this podcast, and I want you to just meditate and take the time to think and write down, what is a new story that I need to tell myself? And I need for you to realize that you're not bound to the old chapters that you've already lived. And every great story has a plot, has a twist, pivots, and moments where the main character rises above the odds. So I want you to know that you get to decide. Like, you get to decide, you get to respond, you get to grow, you get to show up in your life where you can design how you choose to live out the narrative. You get to decide the limiting beliefs that you want to continue to live out. So your story is about resilience, reinvention, and relentless pursuit of your purpose. Thanks so much for joining The Winning Edge. I appreciate you, and I look forward to the next episode. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of The Winning Edge. You can write in and ask your questions on my Instagram page at Leonard Wheeler 7, and I will address your questions on an upcoming episode. If this episode helped you, I would love for you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and family. Share the episode with those that you feel can benefit from it. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, X, and LinkedIn, found in the show notes. I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe now, and let's build your legacy.